I'm Robin Fickey, Senior Vice President of Research at World Business Chicago. I'm here today at the Chicago Venture Summit, Future of Climate, with Shaloo Garg from Microsoft. Take a second and introduce yourself.
Hey, Robin. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
As Robin said, my name is Shaloo Garg, and I'm with Microsoft. I am part of the team that leads pre-IPO and the IPO business. Really excited to be here and so energized to meet so many founders and local investors in Chicago.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It's a very exciting environment. It's loud. People are definitely networking and connecting here. So let's dive in. Really quickly, you mentioned a little bit about what you do at Microsoft. Tell me, what do you look for in early stage versus late stage founders? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So early stage startups, when we look at early stage startups, we in a very classic world, look for platform adoption. So Microsoft has the Azure cloud, which is one of the best industry-renowned clouds. So we look to help the founders on technology. And the founders that we classically look for are pre-seed, seed, Series A, who have a minimum viable product, perhaps getting on the ramp of getting funding for their company, perhaps, have a few set of customers, have a little bit of ARR, which is the annual recurring revenue.
Right.
And basically passion. I mean, personally, when I talk to founders, and I've been in the startup space for almost a decade now, both on the investment side and the corporate startup side. And I would say that one of the things that I personally look for is the team that actually built the company. And, it's interesting, Robin, because every time I meet the founders, one of the few questions that I ask them is, tell me about you, why, who are you? And it's amazing how much that opens up and how their personal life or perhaps their own journey in life connects them to founding the business that they have, which is amazing.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things about the venture summits here, are talking to founders, because there is always a connection and you learn so much about how people came to make this decision. I'm going to found a company and start this really giant thing. It's a fabulous story. So I appreciate that you get to hear that as part of your
Absolutely. In
daily
fact,
work.
I'm going to give you a small experience that I just had. So I just met with a founder who's building this amazing solution around clean water. And I was like, this is amazing. What got you to this point? And he said, I got laid off. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And he said, I got laid off from my company 2 years ago. And the best thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
And that kind of took me to this journey of building a new startup. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. They're just always so, I'm so inspired by other people's just verve for life. Yeah. It's amazing. So then let's think through, tell me a little bit about late stage as well, what you kind of look for in late stage. You talked a little bit about early. Tell me, if there's anything different for late stage founders.
Absolutely. So late stage startups is a totally different ballgame. It's when you see the maturity curve in a startup. And as we say, the startup is more stable. And by stability, I mean, you have a brand association or credibility in the market.
Right.
You have a total addressable market size established. You have a portfolio of customers who believe in you. You have investors on your cap table who have betted on you. And so from there are a variety of things that we look for is what is the affinity or the synergy of the product of the company to Microsoft. And the uniqueness that Microsoft brings is we tend to look at late stage companies more from a partnership perspective. So for us, it's not just getting a deal done, that getting them on an Azure platform. It's more about, let's have a conversation. Let's see what's a win for you. And it could be, a founder may say, I need more customers. And Microsoft having a broad portfolio of enterprise customers. So we say, okay, well, we can connect you to these enterprise customers. And let's see, what are the steps we need to take to make that happen. It's extreme. I would say it's an extreme case of due diligence. So, obviously we don't want to disrupt what they're already doing. And some of the companies we work with are pre-IPO. So they have S1 filed, SEC, engaged. And we just want to make sure that, we're not disrupting that process and really coming in to help them augment or perhaps accelerate their journey. So and one of my most favorite parts about the job that I do is just working with founders to accelerate their business and actually make their dream a reality, which is one aspect which I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah, that's actually really, that sounds like so fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think on that, we've talked a little bit about, right, the journey and how people, decide to start a company, to go out on their own, how to become a founder.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom out there that sort of says, when we talk about innovation and technology, it's really, identify the gaps. What are the gaps in those things? And tell me, though, what are other gaps that people should be, or founders and everyone should really be thinking about that haven't been clearly identified by this innovation technology sort of discussion? What are we missing in that?
So great question. And thank you so much for asking. It's a very thoughtful question. So look, there are multiple, I think there are a zillion reports in the market as to what really a founder needs, irrespective of the business model. So they can be a commercial startup, they can be a social impact startup. There are three things that a founder needs. They need money. Yeah. So they need funding, to your point. They need technology to build their solution on. And then thirdly, they need mentors, right? I mean, that's kind of table stakes. Every founder at any stage would look to that in some capacity or the other. To me personally, one of the things that really, really breaks my heart is the lack of conversation around diversity.
Yeah.
Which is, bringing more female entrepreneurs, bringing more underrepresented founders in the conversation. Now, of course, I've worked with previously, in my previous role, worked a lot with global founders and VCs around the world. And one of the things that we often hear is, well, there's a pipeline issue, which is, when we are looking to invest as a VC, there aren't too many female-founded startups. And the response to that is, have you deliberately or intentionally looked for one? Because if you do, you will find one, right? But it all comes back to the intent of what you want to accomplish. So, it just comes back to opening the paradigm for having the conversation and actually giving women entrepreneurs an opportunity to basically bring their best. Now, generative AI, hot topic in the market, right? One of the amazing things and one of the use cases that we are seeing is, how do VCs bet on startups without actually looking at the name of the founder, where the origin of where the founder is or the company is, and actually just evaluating based on the business model. Look, the numbers are really bad. I mean, overall, I think between 2010 and 2023, in 2010, the global funding, out of the global funding, 11.2% of the funding went to female founders. In 2022, actually, the number is just like 13.2.
Right.
Not a massive leap, but at least folks like you and I are having this conversation and, our listeners are at least listening to it. So hopefully we'll give more opportunities to underrepresented and female founders there.
Right. I definitely think that's the theme, especially at this, at the Climate Tech Venture Summit, but also is really, we have to start talking about some of these issues. We're not going to address them until we first start talking about it and acknowledging it and really kind of saying, okay, how do we think about this? Thank you for sharing that. So on that note, you touched on mentorship as being really important. You touched on kind of, really thinking intentionally about diversity. So let's merge those two, because I imagine too, if you're a female founder, there's not a lot of mentors who have been in your shoes. So what would you say to founders that are here, or really anywhere at any time? What's your advice to them, What should they take away from a venture summit, but also what should they carry with them as they're on their journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. So coming from a space, I would say, of experience, wisdom, and seeing a lot of failures in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, the number one advice that I would give to a founder is do not take no sitting down.
Okay.
So which is, let's say, as a founder, you're passionate about your idea, and then you kind of bring your idea into reality by building a product. And let's say you go to a VC or maybe a family fund and say, I need a 500K check as my seed round. And someone may just say, what are you doing? This doesn't even make sense. I've seen a lot of founders get demotivated early on to say, maybe I should just not pursue this. But it's very critical to love the baby that you have. And to, it's your baby, and folks can call it ugly, but at the end of the day, it's still your baby. And so please do not take no sitting down. And,
advice.
The other thing I would say is, if someone gives you feedback, you don't have to always enact on the feedback. Listen, pivot.
Right.
But it's almost leadership by consensus. So you listen to everybody in the room, but then ultimately you make your own call on that. And that's where I think, most of the founders, they just say, hey, how do I know what is right from wrong?
Right.
And at the end of the day, you will know what is right, and you will know what is not right for your business.
Yeah. That's great advice. So then let's wrap this up. Thank you for taking the time. But really quickly, two or three things that what should we be looking out over the next 5-10 years? What's your top of mind as you think forward into the future? Anything that you wanted to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 things top of mind. Number 1, technology is going through a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it's almost like going back not a few years ago, almost like a decade and a half ago, when the internet came into being, or 2 decades ago. And, with this new conversation around generative AI, it's changing the way we work. It's changing the way we interact with people.
Right.
Our customers are changing, their needs are changing, so we have to be on the lookout of the changing technology around us. The second thing I would say is the opening, or I would say more entrepreneurs coming into the fold because of the changes that are happening in the technology sector. And that's across the spectrum. So it's not just commercial tech startups, but also social impact startups.
Right.
And the third thing I would say is, which I see, is folks like you and I, 2 women, having this conversation and actually encouraging more women to come forward. I think we need more of us. And if anyone out there is listening, please do come forward and encourage more women to co-innovate, co-develop, and build amazing solutions for our economy, our society, and our community.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. This was fun.
Wonderful. I know. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.